from. Now, this morning, we're joined by Lomnuku Ahlija. He is lawyer, lecturer, and energy expert. Kofi Tonto is political aide to former Vice President Muhammadu Bawumia, and as well via Zoom, we shall be joined by Dr. Nana Yaw Mireku. He's an international relations analyst, and Vicky Bright is former legal advisor to former President John Ejikun Kufuor, and as well an entrepreneur. David Vondi is member of Parliament for Chifo Etifu Bokwa and board member of the Security and Exchange Commission of Ghana. So stay with us. Quite a lot happening this morning. At some point, we shall take you to the live coverage of a conversation on our food sovereignty that will be happening on Joy FM. We'll be telecasting that for you, both on radio and also on TV. But this morning, though, I'll start with the two gentlemen. Good morning. Did you have a good weekend?
Well, it was a long weekend, so it wasn't bad.
Hey, Kofi, wasn't easy. This weekend, they actually wanted all students where this man belongs to. They were like,
I saw the video.
Get better crowd.
It shuts down the entire country. It was easy.
It wasn't easy at all.
At all.
They did well. I saw the videos. They did well. But then I also saw another student group. I don't know the
Holy
name.
Child.
Holy Child, yes.
Holy Child.
I saw the Vice President in attendance as well.
The competition was very stiff, but we made sure that we asked Holy Child on this occasion. Yeah, it was great.
Okay,
really great. Yes.
So, well, really, let's talk about the big elephant in the room. Many say that it's not an action that will affect us directly, but indirectly we'll feel it. And of course, it's the obvious war that's ongoing between the US, Iran, and as well Israel, right? And quite recently, you must have seen the reports that you are the experts in it, that our military camp is the most slang word that I can use, was hit in Lebanon. And you've seen the foreign minister as well, Ghanaian UN peacekeeping, I should say, the center there was hit, and with some of our soldiers as well affected. One, they say, is traumatized. Two, as well, hurt. You have seen that the foreign ministry has as well released a statement. I'm quite curious if you have seen that statement, Kofi. Does that statement really address the issue that we should be concerned about?
Well, first and foremost, a very good morning to you and to your cherished viewers. I do have a few issues that I would like to bring up before I go on the subject. One being the Independence Day celebration. You know, I get the whole bit about saving money, but I think I'm a bit also concerned about the approach the president has taken in as far as how we celebrate Independence Day. Look, Independence Day celebration is for all of us. I don't think it's for a few people in the political class to celebrate on our behalf. And for me, it's an expense worth spending on all of us if it means being creative and doing it better. For example, the time where we were rotating it, sending it to different regions, it was adding value. Aside from the cultural value, economic value, it gave us a sense of what was happening in other regions, who they were, the people, etc. So I don't get the whole bit about having to center everything in Accra. And I strongly disagree with the approach that a few people will meet in Accra and celebrate on our behalf. For example, I sat home, nothing, just a holiday. Well, it's supposed to be Independence Day for all of us. All of us. We should organize several economic and both fun and hospitable activities for all of us to engage in. So I stand in protest against the approach. I think, and this is my personal position,
okay,
I think we need to go back to the old ways. Not necessarily the old ways of doing it, but the old ways of rotating it and bringing it to different regions. Even if we want to make it smaller, that's okay. But we can go to different regions and use it as a means of highlighting different regions, different culture, different way of life, and then also boosting the economy. I don't get the whole thing about sitting at the Jubilee House and a few political people will just celebrate Independence Day on our behalf. I strongly detest and reject that position.
Okay. Okay.
And then also very quickly, in 2021, the MPP under Nana Yaw Mireku's government took a position, a policy position, to increase our gold reserves. At the time, our total gold reserves was about 8.7 tons. But under the gold purchase program, we purchased gold domestically to shore up our reserves. As of the time the MPP was leaving government, we had been able to increase our gold reserves to 30 tons. Magically, this government comes in, continues with the policy. Then a few months ago, the government tells us that they want to diversify their portfolio. This is what Bank of Ghana was telling us. So they sold 18 tons of our gold reserves at a cost of $2.2 billion. Interestingly, just a month or two after they have sold $2.2 billion worth of our gold, they are now telling us that they are going to buy gold again. Guess what? Gold prices, an ounce of gold at the time they were selling it was $3,500. Today, as I speak to you, an ounce of gold is $5,000. Meaning, the government of Ghana, if we choose to buy the same 18 tons of gold back, we would have to buy it at a cost of $3.4 billion. So gold that we had in our reserves, we sold it for 2.2, only to buy the same gold back at 3.4 billion, meaning Ghana is losing 1.2 billion United States dollars. This is an issue Gideon Buakon, MP for Tanonof, raised in Parliament. And I think it's an issue worthy of discussing. Was it an insider trade? Was it a group of people in government that planned this to make money out of this? So it is an issue that I want to use this platform to raise and to protest, that the governor of Bank of Ghana must come out and tell us, one, what informed that decision? Was cabinet aware? Was the president aware? Two, who were the people they sold the gold to? Three, as of the time they were taking the decision to sell the gold, was it the same time that they were taking the decision, the policy decision to buy gold? We want to understand the reason for that policy incoherence.
Okay.
So we take a strong exception. The minority has taken up a step. They want to call for a bipartisan inquiry. Some of us are going to also take additional steps because we need to find out the reason for that mess.
Okay. To be fair, I'll just go around the table.
That's okay.
Because I didn't table this.
No, that's okay. Now, I just
I'll
wanted to raise my protest.
Of course, I've got Dr. Nana Yaw Mireku with me. Nana, I'll come to you, stay with me, but let me still stay in the studio. Lom, you saw the statement, back to what we tabled to discuss today. You saw the statement by the Foreign Affairs. Many have said that it looks as though the Ghanaian forces, were treading quite cautiously in their statement. But what does it mean to the bigger picture of this conflict that's ongoing?
Okay, thank you very much, MFA. So the point is that for international relations and diplomacy, even when you see it directly, you have to be cautious. Because in this case, we know that the conflict particularly involves the Israel Defense Force and also Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is not a state actor. It is actually a group that is outside the formal government sector that is operating in Lebanon. And they've had running conflicts with Israel for years. And that conflict continues to today. And so I've even seen, in addition to the Ghana Foreign Affairs statement, also a statement from the Lebanese, or let me say the Lebanon's Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well. They have also condemned the attack. And essentially what they've done is to put out something similar to what Ghana has also issued. Not directly mentioning any particular, responsible party, but they've simply said United Nations should take it up, do investigation, and come out and ensure that those that are responsible are brought to book. And the reason, as I mentioned, is because for these matters, it may seem even open and straightforward, but they would prefer that an impartial body such as the UN actually goes through the process of determining who was responsible for that attack and so on. Because since there are two actors in the equation, we have to determine who actually did the attack, which involved the Ghanaian contingent UNIFIL. So for me, the statement and how it is couched is consistent with what best international practice, and not only for the Ghana one, even for the Lebanese one as well. It also has the same tone and same feel, essentially calling for investigation and so on. It doesn't directly, name anybody. Yes, because since there are two parties, it's possible that maybe it could come from either side, or maybe, so just to leave it in such a way that the investigative body takes the decision, then they put it out that way. But you can see that this Middle East issue is not going away. The reason is because there are many theaters of war at play now, not only between the US and Israel on the one hand against Iran, but there's also the Israel and Lebanon aspect as well. And we know that they've even been Israel and Yemen as well, Israel and Syria as well. And of course, in those two countries as well, the US supports Israel. So there have also been attacks or strikes from the US involving those countries. So when you look at the entire area, you can see that there's multiple theaters of war currently at play. And the impact on Ghana, obviously, will be direct, because we've talked a lot about this even on the show last week about oil. It's a major commodity that
which is where we'll come to that. And sorry to cut you, but because you're staying in studio, I'll come back fast to pick up on that. Okay. And my area of concern will be how it will directly or indirectly impact in fuel supply. And me, I'm concerned, I can park my car, but I cannot turn off the light. Yes. Honestly, I need light, so no matter what, whether I would affect it. But let me go on phone, because Dr. Nana Yaw would have to leave us at some point. But Doc, good morning. Thank you for staying with us. Last time when we had the conversation, the tea you gave me was so juicy. So you have seen the statement. Let's start from there. And let's also look at the new Supreme Leader as to whether Trump's idea of wanting to be a part of who becomes Iran's new leader is failing, which will mean that even if this war stops today and the new leader, who's the son of the former leader, gets to be the leader today, whether years later, US will have to come in again. But let's start with a statement as the lawyer has started with the conversation. Doc.
Well, thank you. Good morning to members and in the US. So I've seen the statement that has been put forward by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I think that it's responsible in the right direction. I think that probably right.
Oh no.
Hello.
Dr. Mireku, maybe, just maybe, you want to just reposition so we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I was saying that it really speaks to the impact of this war. And I've said that the dire consequences of this war were even predicated on the severity of the crisis. And so the more the war drags, some of these are evident. But I think that what the statement forward for the third right direction. Because
okay. Doc, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to drop the line, and then we'll reconnect again to see if we can pick up. The network is not very kind to me this morning, so reconnect. Adibia, try to see if you can reconnect to Doc for me again, if it will be clear. But it will just be appropriate if I allow you to land, Lom, then I'll come to you, Kofi.
So even beyond the countries I mentioned, there are additional ones as well, because we know that Iran's retaliation to the strikes from US and Israel has even gone into Saudi, UAE, and other countries. In fact, a very close friend of mine was stuck in the UAE, but thankfully he's been able to get to Accra yesterday, and they've had to, UAE government has had to make arrangements so that there's military escort for commercial or passenger flights to be able to leave, and he's now in Ghana. So just imagine the conflict in that entire Middle East area. It will directly impact Ghana, obviously, because oil is a major commodity that the world consumes. Ghana consumes that as well. Even though we have oil in Ghana, we also import significant amounts of oil. And so anything that affects that region directly will impact.
Which one is plenty?
We import more now. Yes, because we still have a lot of exploration going on, even recently.
Please hang in there. I have Dr. Nana Yaw again. Doug, let's try again. Let's hear you.
Is it okay?
Hopefully.
Can I talk?
Yes.
Can you guys hear?
Yes. Please
All right.
proceed. Yeah.
All right. So as I was saying, the information put forward by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a responsible step in the right direction, because I'm sure Ghana has its suspicion as to who dropped this attack, who struck Ghana's mission in Lebanon. But you see, you can't carry out, any act of accountability without establishing who really is responsible. And Ghana is there on behalf of the United Nations. The United Nations is an international legal personality. And so it has the capability and the ability, the capability and the resources to really undertake this kind of investigation. I think it was Dag Hammarskjöld who said that the United Nations was not created to take mankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell. And so the job that the United Nations does is very crucial. I don't think it wants to set a precedent that it is unable to protect its peacekeepers from harm's way. And so I am hoping that the United Nations is able to come up with some credible result as to who really is responsible, because it shouldn't be taken lightly. And so I'm hoping that they're able to come up with some result. And then from there, whether the United Nations will pursue it, or once we are aware of which of the parties, whether it's a non-state actor or it was a state actor, I think that the Ghanaian government will take it on from there in that respect. I see that the foreign minister has engaged the representatives of Israel and I think Lebanon, right, and Iran, sorry, in the past few days. And so I'm hoping that in the days ahead of us, there will be some results from the investigations that are being carried forward.
But we know the UN security, we know what it takes. We know those who have veto, though we don't know the country that may have, engaged in this particular attack. I like to think that the Ghanaian forces would have their suspicions. But you're calling on the UN. It looks as if both of you today seem to sound the same. But what's your anticipation? If the US has got veto of the UN security, really, what's your anticipation?
So it depends on which of the parties struck that unfortunate strike against Ghana's mission in that area.
And if they are not an actor, then?
But of course, if my suspicion is that if it is indeed US, you see, the idea you must understand is that the United Nations is made up of states. And so when push comes to shove, state interests primarily always rise above UN interests. When push comes to shove and states have to pick, they really put their interest over UN interest. So in the worst case scenario, if say for instance, it is Israel, right? You see, the idea you must also understand is that Israel has always won, and I'm not saying that this is in support of Israel, but I'm just giving you the dynamics and the nuances. Israel had always said that in striking Hezbollah in Lebanon, sometimes these UN forces, especially on the blue line is a border that was drawn between Israel and Lebanon. And the United Nations interim forces in Lebanon has been there since 1978 to protect that blue line that was drawn between Israel and Lebanon. And Israel had warned that in its attack against Hezbollah, some of these UN peacekeeping missions are sometimes in the way. They are closer to the areas that harbor Hezbollah, activities. And so in striking Hezbollah, sometimes they come across as collateral damage, but this is not supposed to be the case, because these are neutral mediators in the war. UN peacekeepers are neutral mediators in the war. And so every care must be taken that they are taken out of harm's way. But if push comes to shove and the US, must come to the side of the Israel, we know that how that story, the end of that story is likely to be. But I'm hoping that because the United Nations see the role of the peacekeeping missions as very, very crucial to the functions of the UN, I'm sure. It is not to pursue accountability, but to, the preliminary stages of this investigation is to find out who really struck Ghana's peacekeeping mission, headquarters peacekeeping mission in Lebanon. I am hoping that the United Nations is able to do good on this particular development. And mind you, Ghana's government is not the only one that is pursuing United Nations to embark on this act. I hear the friend, because you see, The UN peace interim force in Lebanon is made up of almost 10,000 troops. India, Indonesia, Spain, Italy, France, Nepal. Ghana has been one of the, Ghana has a reputation for peacekeeping activities. And so I hear the Irish government and the French government have also put, because their forces are also closer to Ghana's, position in that area. So they are also pushing the United Nations to really come up, with this kind of investigation and the outcome for it. So I want to be optimistic that even though there's geopolitics, there's power play in the United Nations, I'm sure that this first state of responsible act of finding out who really is responsible for this action would come forward, because Ghana's government is waiting for this result, for it to pursue the next line of action. So I'm sure if the United Nations doesn't act right, I'm sure we would also have, an opinion on this issue.
Opinion? What would the opinion look like? What would this opinion take? But before you answer that, let's look at the bigger picture. I'm staying with you on this before we come in studio, would be that now Iran has got a new supreme leader. What does this mean to Trump himself and Iran as a country? Even if the war stops today, and that leader is still a leader, do you anticipate that years after the U.S. would have to enter? Because Trump has been quite clear that he must have a direct or indirect control over who becomes Iran's leader.
Thank you. I think I would answer your question and link it to a consequential impact of this crisis. And I've always said that, I think the U.S. administration should be really, up to date on their history lessons in their Middle East. Because you see, you cannot destroy a republic, an Islamic republic, a regime, a very strong Islamic leadership, a Sunni leadership for that matter, by just killing the Ayatollah, right? What U.S. is pursuing now is social engineering. The fact that you want to institute a kind of governance system in Iran, you want to make sure you have a hand in selecting the local leadership in that area, for me, is very far-fetched. And this is an attempt of social engineering. And the U.S. has a very abysmal performance when it comes to social engineering in that area. For almost 20 years, the U.S. was a failure in Afghanistan, and we saw the blowback in Afghanistan. For 8 years, the U.S. was a failure in Iraq, and we saw how this attempt of pursuing social engineering has created political implosion. And the impact of this political implosion has been the radicalization of Islamist elements. Some of these radicalization have carried out attacks. And these attacks have not only taken place in the Middle East and in American spaces, but even non-American spaces. And so when you go there, and I hear now the American government is trying to support the Kurds, right? The Kurdistans in Iran, and then the internal Kurds in Iraq, to try to antagonize and take the Iranian regime. The point is that the Kurds do not have effective organized resistance, right, to overthrow the kind of system that the Americans want them to undertake in. And so it is a very consequential war for the Americans. Right now, they have to pursue, if they really want social engineering, the airstrikes they are pursuing is not enough. They have to put forces on the ground, what you call ground confrontation or ground invasion. And when you do that, what it means is that you are changing the whole dynamics. You are prolonging the war because you don't know what is in there for you when you pursue ground invasion. Okay. And so I don't think that the new Ayatollah that has been, Trump will have anything to say about it. You take away the Ayatollah, they have a system that replaces the Ayatollah. Another person comes in. And the very system you are trying to antagonize, you would have all the military resources to go after Iran. But the Iranians are fighting what you call an asymmetric war of attrition. For them, it's an essential threat. So they are going all out. You have your most sophisticated system, but they will destroy them with their cheap drones. And the Iranians have a strategy. Let me just, probably the last thing I'll say. They are hoping to prolong this war so it plummets Trump's popularity rate in US. And if they're able to carry this war into a third, 4 months, that means that they are carrying the war into the midterm elections. And we know how that is likely to affect the Trump administration and the Republican Party. So I think the next days ahead of us. But like I'm saying, the impact of this war is predicated on the longevity. If it continues, I'm sure the price of oil we are buying, the liter we are buying for 9 cedis, 10 cedis now, if it goes on somewhere 15 cedis a liter, knock on wood, it's likely to happen. So let's see how the days ahead of us, will be.
Very well said, Doug. If you have time, please stay with us. But if you don't, thank you for joining us this morning. And back in studio, Vicky's just joined us. But Kofi, should we allow Lom to just land on his points? Sure, and then, Lom, if you have been following the news, you'd realize that the oil supply to consumers in Iran, that part as well has been hit. I don't know what that means, but again, Doctor has said a lot, but let me hear you make your point.
Yes, I think in addition to the statements that Doc mentioned, I've also seen one by the Ghanaian forces specifically. And they also touch on the fact that even their facility was completely burned down. So, I mean, those are soldiers who are Ghanaians, and we should really be looking out for them and their welfare. So it's quite sad that two of them are injured and one is traumatized. But on the oil matter, as I mentioned, the entire Middle East is an oil-rich region. And as we've already discussed in the past, the Strait of Hormuz is the major trading, if I say, shipping route that brings that commodity to the rest of the world, essentially. And that has close proximity to Iran, and Iran has indicated quite clearly that it's not going to allow, free flow of ships and so on. The U.S. has said they are prepared to provide, military support for ships to go through, but that has not happened yet. So obviously it affects supply, and that will impact countries like Ghana, because we import a lot of fuel, not only us, but many other African countries. Now, when fuel prices go up because there's less supply, it will directly impact electricity, it will impact our transport fares, it will impact everything. So to make sure that the country is not reeling under this challenge, a lot depends on the strategies that the finance ministry will put in place, because every country must strategize how it intends to deal with this issue. I've seen, for example, suggestion by COPEC about a fund to support national reserves, which I think is interesting, but it has to be interrogated quite further, because currently the country already has a national oil reserve program, which is to ensure that at any point in time we have several weeks of fuel supply so that disruptions like this does not affect us, which is why Doc is saying that Iran wants to prolong it to impact other things, which will, including the U.S. elections and so on. But for us in Ghana, that's what it will mean. Significantly, our power producers are thermal-based. We have some hydro resources like Akosombo and Kpong, but more than 50% of our power supply in Ghana is from thermal sources, which is mainly gas and heavy fuel oil. And when gas is not available, we depend on such fuel sources, which means that it could affect our electricity supply as well. So we want to see, perhaps in the coming days, what will be said by the finance ministry in terms of what they are planning, what they have put in place to mitigate the effect of the higher price as a result of the shortage from that region and the limitations in terms of shipping that has been occasioned because of the Strait of Hormuz closure, in quotes, and so on. And so there are many dimensions that we need to be looking at. It's multifaceted, obviously, but we as a country need to state quite clearly what we are putting in place to preserve the economy, to ensure that we have buffer that will ensure that we are not impacted significantly as a country.
Okay. Kofi, let me hear you on this.
Yes.
I know that you took a position last week. You said that this war will not impact the economy in any way. Are you still staying with that?
Of course, but that was me being sarcastic.
Oh, you were, huh?
Of course. and last week, a video came out of President Mahama actually saying that Ukraine is 7,000 kilometers away from Ghana, so there's no way a war in Ukraine can affect Ghana. When I said it, people thought I was just making a comment, but our team was able to actually go into the archives and find a video of the president, then candidate Mahama, actually making the same statement. So yes, I was being sarcastic in the sense that Ghana will not be affected, but I was only reinforcing the reckless comments the NDC made in opposition, including the president himself, respectfully. It was a very reckless comment from the then candidate to have said that. Because you see, a lot of the things they said in opposition, interestingly, have found a way to bite them in power, from Boko to Cocoa and now to this issue. A lot of things. I can give you a litany of things they said in opposition that somehow magically they have turned around to bite them in power. But to discuss the real meat, the real substance, of course, Ghana is going to be affected. And in multiple ways. Number one, if the prices of crude go up, as we've already seen that they are going up, I think Elon may correct me on this, but the last time I checked, $100 per barrel. Now, the current prices on the domestic market of $11.95 per liter is probably priced using crude price of about $66 or $70 per barrel. So if we now have to use $100 per barrel, you can imagine what the cost of petrol is going to be on the market in the next week or so. It's going to affect all of us. That is just one aspect of it. The price of crude will definitely affect, because when you look at the price buildup of our domestic petrol pricing, it's taxes and levies, the price of crude, and then the exchange rate. So aside from the direct impact of the price of crude, the other impact, which in this case may not be so much, thanks to the thinking caps of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, that look, let's shore up our gold, let's shore up our reserves, and make sure that we don't find ourselves wanting again in the future. So a lot of people told us, but you guys were building gold reserves. Why didn't you sell it and put it in the economy? Why did you shore up the FX or the import cover? At least now, Ghana's import cover, per what we left and per what they have also added on, we have about $13 billion in our import cover. What it means is that once crude prices go up, the demand for dollar will go up. But at least we have respite in knowing that our FX cover is big enough. I think right now we have about 5 months of import cover. It's big enough to support or cushion the demand that is going to arrive with the increase in crude. And then we are also likely, if it prolongs, if this whole thing protracts for too long, we are going to see inflationary pressures, because prices of goods and services will definitely come along. I mean, will go up as petrol go up, as demand for dollar go up. Prices of goods and services will also go up. So these are the various areas that we can be affected. Number 4, prices of utility. When you look at the price build-up for utility adjustment, inflation, exchange rate, and then the cost of fuel. As I said it last week, the government has increased electricity by 27% in 1 year. Now, if these build-ups, exchange rate goes up, inflation begins to pick up again, and then prices of, as Lom was saying, about 50 to 60% of our energy mix, generational mix, actually now is more. I think it's about 60 to 70% or so. I stand to be corrected, because we have hydro, and then we have thermal, and then we have renewable. But the renewable is very minimal. But thermal stands to make the most of our generation mix. And we use gas and sweet crude to power the thermal. So if these things go up on the market, then what it means is that fuel will go up, exchange rate will go up, and then inflation will go up. These are the 3 build-ups for your tariff adjustments. If all these 3 things go up, then Ghanaians can expect another increment in their tariff, in the next tariff adjustment. So we can be hit literally from about 4 angles that I've enumerated. That goes to show how reckless then candidate Mahama was, how reckless the NDC was. That indeed, domestic markets, especially emerging markets, that are usually 80 to 90% open markets and rely solely on the international market, yes, can be affected by global exogenous factors and global issues. Okay. Trump and Netanyahu sat in their bedrooms, took a decision. I sit at Adenta. I was not there. But that decision is going to affect us. Adenta. It's going to affect somebody in Kaswa, Kentampo. And then, as you rightfully said, you don't mind the car, but your electricity may be a challenge. Yeah. And I saw a video on TikTok, and a young girl was saying that now, when the light goes off, you don't know if it is lights off or if it is your prepaid that is done, because of how fast the prepaid is running. If I tell you that I've bought about 500 cedis of electricity in 1 week. Would you believe me?
I would believe you because we're in it together.
1 week.
I will believe that's very, very variable.
So if 4 weeks I'm buying 2,000 cedis of electricity, that is almost $200.
Hey,
that's the point.
We are coastal.
That's the point. I mean, why should I be buying close to $200 of electricity?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Ridiculous amounts as well. Vicky, it'll be a good time to bring Vicky in. I mean, multiples, yeah?
Oh, I see. Vicky, wow.
Yeah, Vicky, good morning. And I love that outfit on you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Let me hear you. I know that you were quite straight on the Strait of Hormuz last week and telling us how it can be very impactful. But we're here again. It looks like this war would be quite prolonged. I mean, from my just inexperienced view of how it's going and hearing from the experts. Let me hear from you.
Yes, no, I mean, we can't sit here and say it won't affect us because of the importance of all this interconnectivity with economies and, our own reliance as Ghana on refined petroleum products. What is happening in the Middle East is affecting everyone, not just the countries involved. And even people who don't want to be pulled in it are somehow finding a foot or an arm in it. And so for us here in Ghana, it does matter because, as I said, we import a lot of refined petroleum products. Our petrol, our diesel, aviation fuel, etc., are all imported. And we know that energy prices feed directly into our transport costs, and then our food prices, inflation, and generally the cost of doing business. And it can also lead to fiscal pressures on government and balance of payments pressures. And when this happens, there's a greater demand on the US dollar because things are more expensive, so you need more dollars to buy what you need. And that then in turn puts pressure on our own currency. So the Middle East crisis reminds us once again how exposed we are, how vulnerable we are to global energy shocks. When oil prices move, inflation, transport, and then we feel it in our pockets, as we're talking about now. Household budgets immediately go up. Right now, we have healthy reserves. We have about 5 months cover. I know the government talked before all this happened of pushing it up to about 15 months. Mm-hmm. I'm not too sure whether we've passed the 5-month cover. I mean, so for now, we're okay, but for how long? And that also it's linked to whether things stabilize quickly, how long the war goes on for, etc. The analysts are talking now about, in fact, we have to talk about our gold reserves, our gold, because that is what's shoring us up with our reserves. And with the airspaces closed or restricted traffic, that's also affecting us. That's another angle from which we are being impacted. Because most of our gold goes to the UAE for refining and then onward distribution to countries, Hong Kong and other places. And gold, of course, is heavy, so it travels by air. And if the airspace is closed, then, you can't...
Now you have gold, you can't even sell.
Exactly, you can't do that. And I know that there are alternative routes. For us, those are far, and they can be very expensive. You're talking about India and these kinds of places. It's going to be more costly for us to go down that route. So I know we have to change some of these things. And I know that Gold Board, one of the reasons why they were set up was to see how we can also be acceptable to the international markets, the bullion market, and build a proper market in Ghana here. Because we do refine some gold, but it's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
You've got to be LBMA approved, accredited, etc. And the process has started. So I think that is in the right direction. And I hope that one day we will become a major hub for refining West Africa gold. And then when we are faced with shocks like the one that we're being faced with, it will help us. But this, again, we shouldn't take this for granted because the Sahel countries are also competing to do exactly that. So it's something that we have to do. So I think, yes, is the short answer. We are being affected. So far, we're insulated, and we have to commend the finance minister and the Bank of Ghana for doing that. But for how long, we don't know. Going forward, there are all sorts of things that we should be doing. As I said, improve local refining capacity, build strategic petroleum reserves, and you'll probably talk about the COPEC thing as a separate topic, but that's one of the things they're talking about. And then do more of what we've been doing, maintaining strong foreign reserves as a buffer.